got with us two individuals who have been pioneers in the digital revolution that India undertook in the early 70s. Ajai Chowdhry and Shiv Nadar, the pillars really of the HCL empire, not just HCL technology. Ajai Chowdhry here representing HCL Infosystems. And it is going to be our effort here this evening to understand how they created this global empire, the challenges, the mistakes, the lessons that they learned. Let me kickstart this session by asking you, because it was the six of you that got together in the early 70s, gave up your jobs at that point in time, pooled in your savings, which were, I think, about under 2 lakh rupees, and decided that India required computers when India only had 250 computers. What gave you the courage of conviction at that point in time?
India did not even have 250 computers. If you just look back, the previous 30 years, the world created only the mainframes. There were many computers that came along, and at that time was born microprocessors. In our belief, microprocessors were going to change the way people lived, people computed, and we thought we would take a directional change and make our career shift. We thought that we'll just go about building computers and then get started and see what the world has in store for us.
But what gave you the ability to take that risk at that point? Because none of you really came from a business background in that sense. You were small town boys, if I can call it that. I remember you saying at one point in an interview that you were 22 when you first saw a big city. So what gave you the courage and the ability to take that risk at that point in time when holding on to a job was really everything?
You see, if you've seen the people who took the risks at that time in the world, there were many who took, very few that survived. Out of the people who survived, I can only count 3 who were in the 70s who survived in that period. One was Steve Jobs. He almost lost everything and then came right back during the last 10 years. The other one who was sheer accident, which is Bill Gates with Microsoft. And then the third was the bunch of us who started off in HCL. There is no one who started out at that time who survived this entire period.
What was the vision when you actually started off? Because as you said, you didn't really have an idea that you were going to, in that sense, be pioneers, not just of Indian technology, but as you said, of world technology. What were you hoping to do at that point in time?
As we just said, we'll take the microprocessor and change the world. I mean, when you're so young, I was just 25. And at that time, you really don't have any fears. You want to just do something which you believe in. And that's really what we went about doing. And our previous job had sort of got us into thinking in this direction in any case.
How critical was it for the 6 of you to get together? How critical was it for the right minds to get together? Because we've seen this story. Infosys is really a story about its 7 founders. HCL Empire is the story about 6 founders. Of course, 2 of you have stuck on pretty much right through.
Well, actually, when Shiv actually thought about this whole thing that let's go and start a company. And he called a whole bunch of people around in DCM where he used to work. And I think there were about 14, 15 people he talked to. I don't think more than 5 had the guts to come and join. And I think looking back, it was a great decision.
Was there a business plan at that point?
Yes, actually I wrote the business plan.
Okay.
It was a one-man department which formed this business plan. And using microprocessors, we had a choice. We could have gone into computers. We could have gone into medical electronics. We had 2 options, and we had a team of people in the Electronics Commission who helped us out, Dr. Seshagiri and his team. And I wrote the report for both, and finally it was a judgment call whether we go towards computers or whether we go towards medical electronics. I'm sure both would have been.
What was the tipping point really in favor of computers?
The tipping point, you know, I want you to tell all of you. The tipping point was government was going to be the largest customer, and virtually 90% of the demand was controlled in medical electronics by the government. And here there was a lot of scope in the private sector. So we said, let's go towards where the private world is, because the government budget changes. We don't know. We don't want to be in the hands of just a bunch of people who will be deciding on budgets. Actually, that was the tipping
But
point.
ironically, you brought in a government partner when you started the company.
Then we said that, you know, to manufacture, we could not, it was the days in which we could not get a license if we went as a private entrepreneur. And that too, 6 people, if we go up and say that we are going to put together a computer company, there was no chance we could have got a license.
So the answer to that was getting the UP government on board.
That's correct. And I think one very important thing that happened at that time, which was very useful for us when we launched the company, is that we decided to use the name Hindustan.
That's right.
Now,
Hindustan Computers Limited,
yes,
that's what it was called.
Yeah, so Hindustan was a very important decision because Hindustan name was not given to many other companies. It was given to basically public sector and maybe a couple of very big companies. So when we came with the name Hindustan, we already looked big. And that was very important for us to market our products and position the company.
What were the first couple of years like? What were the biggest challenges in the first couple of years for you? Because I remember you telling me in an earlier interview that there were times when you would actually drive your own car, and I remember it was a Fiat, and actually make deliveries because there was nobody else to do them at that point in time. Take us through some of those stories.
Well, actually, as I mentioned last time, what we did was that when we were a bunch of young engineers, and we were creating the computers, and our computers were not ready, but we still wanted to sell them. So the first lot that we made, which was a scientific desktop product, is something that we believed we could go and sell to engineering colleges and institutions like that. So we went to IITs and the top institutions in the country, and we appealed to the professors and said, hey, we are designing this computer. We actually have a breadboard model ready in our labs. We created a beautiful brochure, and just on the power of that brochure and our concept around young engineers trying to create a company, we were able to make sales. So actually, we got orders much before the product, the product was really born.
Okay, what was the turning point, Shiv?
Turning point could have been the 8-bit microcomputer being shipped out on the 26th of March. If we missed those 5 days, we would have lost a lot of business.
Okay.
We would have lost a lot of credibility, and in the government, we would have just been wiped out. It's the same, almost to the week, Apple computers shipped in Cupertino. Our computers were shipping in Noida. It's a real breakthrough.
And I think if we hadn't shipped that day, we would really not have existed. So I think it was a very important tipping point.
Very important tipping point indeed.
We had to pay salaries 5 days afterwards.
Did you manage to get paid salaries, or were you only handing out salaries? How?
We, at the time, the promoters would get paid when there is money.
Yes.
That would be end of next month or so.
So pretty much no pay.
No, we drew our salary. It didn't get that far.
Okay. How did you go about allocating responsibilities? Because when you're, 7 young founders actually going out there creating something that you believe in, how did you go about allocating responsibilities? Who decided what role who would play? Because I know, Mr. Nadar, you're regarded as sort of the visionary, somebody who sort of lays out the larger picture in that sense. Who decided who does what?
Amongst the promoters, there was an unwritten rule that only I would decide.
Okay.
Who would play what role.
Okay.
Otherwise, we couldn't have held together as 7. And then
you think that's important, that you have to have a clear leader in that sense?
Absolutely.
You have to have a clear leader. So this whole business of democratizing corporate hierarchies and so on and so forth, it works, but you need to have that one clear leader.
You can't practice it.
You can't practice it. Let's start the Q&A now. Anybody here who has a question that you'd like to ask either Shiv or Ajay?
How did you find people with the similar kind of passion, take the business forward? If you didn't find such people, how did you instill that same kind of passion which you all had?
When you start to create your organization, one is to look at how good this guy is technically. The other area to look at is what is his attitude in life. And I would always hire for attitude, because I think I can teach him a whole bunch of technology and everything else. So I think that's really what makes the big difference.
So there was a question, there was a observation you just said that you did take salaries and it did not ever reach that level. My question is that, there is always a stage in an entrepreneur's life where he has to take a decision about reinvestment versus dividending out profits. And when there are 6 people, it's easier because you push each other into more reinvestment or more dividend depending upon what the situation is. But when you're the only decision maker, what are the parameters that one should keep in mind in deciding that if I've got $1 million in profit, how much of it should be invested back into the company? How much should be taken by the promoters? And what are the key drivers, and at what stage in an organization do you think this division becomes clearer in the mind of the entrepreneur?
You know, when Ajay said Hindustan computers, we were also trying to avoid UP computers. Okay.
Yes.
It's very important. Okay. Can you imagine? There's no HCL technologies. It will be UP technology, up technologies. They try to sell that idea of UP many ways. We said, no
way.
It will be Hindustan computers. And they were a partner. They had 9 companies, 9 joint ventures. They wanted to prove joint ventures could be successful. And to them, the measure of success was if it could be a dividend-paying company. So they said, dividend, at least a small dividend, please declare. When you are making profit, something should get back to the shareholder. None of us were keen on that because we came from a field in which dividend was not the norm. So to us, it was not a necessity, but we did nevertheless.
So you were in a sense forced into that situation.
Yes.
So what would your advice be to somebody like Vineet at this point in time who's grappling with what to do, how much to reinvest, how much to give out as dividends, how much should he hold back for himself?
I would, you have your whole life ahead. Okay? There is no rush at all. After all, you've just started it. Okay? And you have a compensation. These days are days which are, the fun is what you carry back as your paycheck. Your dividend is really the enjoyment. I think you have something else?
No, I would not think in terms of dividends at all at this moment. Reinvest, grow the company, and go after your dream. That's really what's very important. And at some stage where you believe that maybe you go for an IPO or whatever, that's the time maybe you can start thinking of dividend.
Yes, sir, go ahead. Yeah.
What would HCL be today? Are you a more research and innovation company? Are you a more finance-driven company or a more marketing-driven company?
That's for her to say.
That's for you to say. It's your company. I'm a mere observer. But I would imagine research and innovation would, yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. So quick answer there, research and innovation is how they go.
And I think one key thing you have to remember is that even when you look at research and innovation, marketing forms a very important part of any organization, right? Now, in marketing, when we set out to create HCL, we were creating businesses. So you actually created a market for a product that didn't exist. Okay, at those days we used to sell computers as a concept. That's how we started. So you actually have to innovate in marketing as well, in a lot of ways. For example, we created the EMI concept in this country. It didn't exist, right? We went to IDBI and we said, give this for SMEs. And IDBI had a scheme for SMEs and we started EMI on computers when nobody had really thought of doing it. And that created the whole market for
tax,
computers.
3,500 rupees a month.
3,500.
Boy, it was such a hit.
Say, you were in hindsight, this was 20 years ago and you had your 6 partners again. How would you look at starting up a new business today? Not in terms of which industry to enter, but what are the factors that you would take into account?
Today?
Today.
I'll tell you what I won't do. I would not go to insurance. I would not go to retail. People ask me this question. Why should HCL not consider retail? Retail, maybe some chain in the retail is within our knitting. Would you do any of these businesses? This is no.
So do
there
what
is
you understand.
still a lot to do.
Yeah, but do what you understand.
What we understand well. And there are big companies out there who need to be changed. Okay? If we were to look at the same thing today, I look at it and say that how do we take a bigger bite of what we have in front of us? It's a big industry. See, try and understand. HCL is in avionics industry. Avionics is part of aircraft industry. Aircraft is a $1 trillion industry. Okay. Now, that is not IT, but it's still our knitting. Today, we have patiently built over the last 7 years every part of an aircraft construction. We could design any part of it.
Okay, go ahead.
What kind of qualities would you look for in a successor who could take HCL forward?
I've already done it many times. I do things, and then after a while, I said, it's time for me to get on to something else. I'll always get on to something else. I'm not going to just hang my boots and sleep. This is what I have done continuously. Okay.
You've changed your sort of philosophy as far as customers and clients are concerned. I remember Vineet telling us some time ago that we will only work with customers who consider HCL to be strategic and core. We will have fewer clients, but we will do more for them. This is obviously strategic thinking. It's a deliberate, conscious decision. When you're not going after the volumes, you're not going after the hundreds of clients, but you're going after clients who feel that HCL will in some fashion be strategic and core to their business plans. Is that really the way forward in an increasingly competitive market?
The size of business that we have to do should be meaningful to us, and it should be meaningful to a client.
Couple of $100 million.
Yeah, if it's not meaningful to either of us, then at a CEO level, if they're going to ask HCL, who HCL, they have to say that, yes, they are a partner of ours. Okay. We dropped customers actually.
I know, and some of them came back. I believe you lost about 50 and 46 eventually came back. So that was $80 million worth of business that went away with those 50 clients. That didn't worry you at that point in time? No. Didn't you think that you made the worst decision of your life?
When you're moving with some strategic thinking, short-term losses may not worry you, but it will worry someone who's not in the business but also is an investor. Okay. You have to carry them. You go on to an analyst call, and when you say that you have dropped 50 clients and gave away $80 million for the business, okay, they will look at you and say that your body language is not right.
But how do you deal with that? Because
it's a real problem.
And it is a challenge, especially when you're being looked at quarter after quarter, every number is being analyzed, to actually say that it's a conscious decision. If it costs us 50 clients and $80 million, we'll take that risk.
We'll take that risk. And that is what, you have to, if you're really convinced that you let those customers go so that your salespeople can focus, your execution people can focus on a few clients. You see, all these things come out of your own, what is going to be good for yourself. Okay.
Anybody else here with a question?
There's two kinds of entrepreneurship models. One is what is very much the in thing today, which is other people's money. You have a great plan. You think that you're going to scale a lot. You take that plan for investors. You make a business plan, and you kind of then it's a kind of a straitjacket. You have to stick to that plan, and there's perhaps very little deviation that you can make on that plan. But in your case, and in perhaps the cases of many entrepreneurs, as you get into a business, you find that there are lots of other opportunities that you would never see unless you were in that business. So at the time when you write a business plan, all those opportunities would not be known. They would unfold as you get into the market space. What are your thoughts about it? And it's a practical situation for me.
There's nothing wrong in going and taking money from an investor and then getting started. After all, we went to the UP government. They put in some money, and we pulled some of our money, took their license, and then built a business on top, right? There's definitely one way of doing that. You don't have to put everything by yourself. But do you stick to a business plan as if it is cast in iron? No, definitely not. Definitely not. You couldn't have foreseen. After all, a project plan is not a series of actual profit and loss account as it turns out to be, right? There is as much as you can foresee. And how many factors can you really control? When the changes come, you have to respond to them. That's what makes you will possibly make an opportunity out of problems and convert them into your P&L.
In fact, I remember something that you had said about your joint ventures, and I'm going to quote that. You said many times you can go on your own, but sometimes somebody else's strength and your strength put together can give you much faster growth. So that's really the philosophy, the idea that propelled you to get into a joint venture with Deutsche Bank, with British Telecom, with a whole host of other people that you did get into joint ventures with. So would you advise that to a host of budding entrepreneurs here, that for faster growth, to match their strengths with somebody else's and to actually achieve the goals that they've set out to?
You know, when you see put together, it forms a solution, and you boys yourself are going to take a long time. Try and remember one thing. This is one life. All of us have one life. Okay? And this is no dress rehearsal. This is, you know, being done real time. So if you can pack more within the next 12 months, pack more as much as you can. Okay? But after that, have the confidence that you will, you know, conclude that. Joint ventures forever are very, very rare. Very, very rare. So conclude it right.
Okay.
I
would
think
really
you sort of
advise
start to think, what am I going to achieve out of this joint venture? And you set yourself a time frame and you say, if I've achieved it, that's good enough. You don't need to carry on something which you really have trouble carrying on with. For example, joint ventures are also defined as same bed, two dreams.
Different dreams.
So, you know, there could be many dreams out there.
What I've found is either you have the capability of bringing those dreams to reality yourself, or you find entrepreneurs, or you create entrepreneurs, co-entrepreneurs if you like. That's something which I personally am very interested in, to either create other entrepreneurs or to find. I'd like to learn from your experience of doing that. What's the secret, let's say, of creating or attracting other co-entrepreneurs to, let's say, bring some of these dreams to reality?
An entrepreneurial staging may be required in the first phase. It's better that somebody else does it. As an organization like ours has grown larger, it may be better that you do it outside and then bring it inside. A classic case which I would like to point out is that of Comnet. You know, we really bankrolled it and then pulled it inside HCL Technologies. Many of the, we've done joint, you know, so long as you think with an open mind, the constructs will come to you automatically. Ours is a series of pieces of this entrepreneurship, which we may have got inside or, you know, sold it off.
In your opinion, what is the right critical mass, right time for a startup to think of M&A?
We began with a acquisition because it's a company which was created for exploiting the computer business, where we took the stake.
By the UP government.
By the UP government.
It was their
But
idea to start that company.
Clear acquisition opportunity really came when HP came to India. HP had already started in India. They had their own organization. They had their manufacturing facility. They had their licenses. And we had ours. And one thing that we don't, you know, I would like you to seriously consider this, okay? We never hold anyone to contracts. Okay? We don't hold our employees to contracts. We don't hold our partners to contracts. We said contract is something which is just nice to have, but put it in the safe. Okay? People should, finally, companies don't do business with companies. People do business with people, right? Our associations like HP, there was no parting price. We could have asked anything. And we were very, very honorable the way they came in, the way they left us. Okay? That acquisition idea came from them. It did not come from us. Okay? They said that we will put both these things together. Why don't you see it as a single entity? It is complex to see because we were in 3 other businesses. We were in reprographics, we were in instruments, and we said we will demerge the company. And we said if the concept is appealing to you, we'll leave it to the lawyers. They will do the rest. Okay? They did the rest.
Shiv, actually, sometimes in a manner, luck plays a role. For example, in this whole Hewlett-Packard situation, we went and started manufacturing a product under license, which was called the Apollo workstation. And HP bought Apollo. And in a manner, we inherited HP and HP inherited us. So it just so happens that I was sitting and chatting with their managing director at the Oberoi, Suresh Rajpal, and I was chatting with him and I said, how do we do more than the workstation business. So he said, that looks sensible. Why don't we discuss it? But we've already set up our commercial computer business in India, and we've already started going, and we've got a manufacturing. I said, doesn't matter, let's chat. So I said, Shiv, I came back and met Shiv, and I said, Shiv, why don't we just go and meet Suresh and see what comes out of it? And that's how HCL Hewlett-Packard was born. And I think we learned a lot from that joint venture. We learned what is scale, we learned what is quality, we learned what is process. You know, till that time, as a company, we were passion. HCL was passion 100%.
Still is passion.
And we felt that somewhere passion and quality should, come in, processes should come in. Because as you start to grow, processes are important. But as we say in HCL, pride, passion, performance.
We've got more questions.
How do you manage post-acquisition integration? How did you manage it when you were much smaller and bought smaller companies? And how do you manage it today when you buy much larger companies?
I can give you out of my experience, and I can give you out of someone who has done a lot of these things. Okay? That's John Chambers of Cisco. I asked him the same question. I said, how do you do this? Okay. What we do is we look at the pace at which they should be integrated. Many times, we don't integrate. Okay. This is what, integration is not about the name board which is outside your door, or the email ID which is there in your card. Suddenly, if you put it cisco.com or hcl.in, that doesn't mean integration. A lot of integrations are only gone that far. Okay. The payroll will be integrated. There will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things which can easily come on to. BT, we bought it, let go. It still ran totally by Irish men and women, and raised it from 350 people to 2,000 people. They did it, and we just inculcated a management culture. They come here. Our people don't. There's not a single Indian who sit there and runs it. Okay. DSL, the Deutsche Bank piece, when we bought it, we cast it aside. We put a few people from our organization so that certain quality processes can be brought up to what we wanted to. Other than that, we pretty much left it and built a franchise around that. Okay. So we did that, it worked. But I'm sure there are many ways of skinning this.
We've been talking about the successes, but Ajay, if I can get you to talk about the failures, and I'm sure over the past 3 decades there have been some failures. What are the important lessons that perhaps you've learned along the way when things have not gone the way that you had planned them to be? If you can give us examples.
Pretty early days, somewhere around 88, 89, we decided to, we had developed, we believe, a very good hardware product which was based on multi-processor Unix and what we called a multi-grain Unix. And we felt that globally this product would have a great opportunity. And at that stage, I think McKinsey came in and they were just entering India, and they said, we would like HCL to be our first customer. So we willy-nilly became their customer, and we felt that they would give us an opportunity to go to the United States. And so they wrote this whole strategy, which they said, this is your entry strategy of taking hardware to America. And we decided, fine, that looks good. So we decided to take hardware to America, and we actually took a place in the valley, and we started looking at manufacturing the product there. And in the meantime, we were going and picking up business. And just so happens that we got some reasonably good business.
Very good.
As a matter of fact, it was a pretty big deal actually.
Fortune.
It was Fortune. So, after having got that deal and got our products into the United States, we suddenly discovered that we hadn't taken care of the environmental issues in designing the computer. So what happens at that stage is that nobody in America would buy the product unless it's environmentally
It's
approved.
assumed.
It's assumed. We didn't know that. So in the product that we had designed,
It's not necessary to do that in India.
yeah,
Okay.
but it was required. And so the whole thing was a disaster.
And this is an important lesson, especially for people who are trying to be part of the
it can just
globalized economy.
fall on you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we ran out of everything, and then we switched to, let's do something in software. We hung around. But that was a bad fall.
Bad
Really
fall.
bad fall.
Okay, questions? Lots of them. All right, go ahead. You've got the mic. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the characteristics of entrepreneurs is the more successful you get, the more unreasonable you get in your future expectations. As you look forward, what are the most unreasonable goals that you've set for yourself for the next 5 to 10 years as individuals?
You take first. I'll go next.
You talk. You are the most unreasonable guy.
I'm a product of education, nothing really more. Okay. So, she mentioned it before. I had not seen a city. I grew up all in Mefusel. Okay. I grew up in Tamil education. Okay. I never was in English education. If you've seen engineering, to learn engineering, you don't need English. And I studied in a place like Coimbatore where they will teach English in Tamil. So, coming from that kind of a background, I wanted to return something to the society. So I wanted to set up some schools which possibly will take the disadvantage away to children who are very bright but disadvantaged economically or language-wise or whatever else is the disadvantage that they could have. But the schools I wanted to set up, and I want to set up rather, are world-class. Now, when I walk into something like this, I don't know what is a world-class school. I don't know how to set up one. I don't know how to mix technology with it. I don't know what is optimal. And I have no idea of how to select these people. But yet, I want to have this in a very limited amount of time. And it should get started next year. And in 3 or 4 years' time, there must be at least 6,000 students benefiting from this. Okay. To me, that's a very, very ambitious goal. I've never set upon anything as ambitious as that. It's not about people who are studying. It's about creating leadership coming out of these rural India. Because our future leaders come from there.
I'm not thinking anything outside the scope of work that I do. And therefore, in my mind, there are 2 things that are which I really want to do. One is that set up and create the country's best system integration company. That's really where I'm going. I want to look at creating a $2 billion organization in system integration. And secondly, we've just started a new little project which we believe will be a very big project tomorrow, which is in the business of creating a global security and surveillance business. And that is really what would, excites me today in doing something completely different, but within the whole knitting, as we say. But it's not something that we have done before, and really that's what I want to set up, a global company to do that.
I know these gentlemen for a couple of years now, and so I'm into a little bit of this sort of secret, behind what they actually do when they're not in their boardrooms. And I know both of them are huge movie buffs, sport fanatics as well, cricket in particular. Mr. Chaudhary is a music buff as well. And I know Mr. Nadar has
a film buff.
He's a film buff. He's a film buff. So I'm going to get him to end this with a dialogue that from your favorite movie on what could actually motivate all these young Turks here.
She's done it again.
I've done it again because I think it works brilliantly every single time.
I say this to all my colleagues in HCL pretty openly. So I'll say this to you also. Okay? And I talk to people who join the company and I tell them the same thing. Okay? How many of you have seen this film called Patton? General Patton. There is a tank named after Patton. Okay? There are 2 of you who have seen this. Okay?
A couple of them.
If you've seen the opening remark about Patton is an American general. Okay? Now, he's addressing people. This is Second World War. Okay? Absolute majestically he walks across. And he tells them, he says, no bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won the war by making the other poor bastard die for his country. And then he goes on. So I said, business is about like warfare. Don't go and say that, you know, we fought well and we lost to Wipro.
That's right.
We are not there for it. Okay? You are there to win it fair and square, bring the business, deliver it, and get that guy fired from his job.
All right, on that note, you've given us an insight into the world of Bollywood and also an insight into war room strategies. Shiv Nadar, Ajay Chowdhry, many thanks for joining us here on this Young Turks tutorial. It's been an absolute pleasure. We wish you the very best of luck.